I swear. Sometimes I think the universe has some sick sense of humor just for me. My life, right? It's a whole soap opera, and I'm the star, whether I want to be or not. So, picture this. I'm driving my beat up little car, right? And I'm making deliveries, schlepping groceries for some app, barely making enough to cover my own gas. And where do I end up? At her condo. Not just any condo. Mind you, the condo, the one I set her up to lose. Yeah, you heard me, and she owns it now. Me, I'm delivering her organic kale and artisanal cheese. It's a special kind of hell. Let me tell you, my name's Jessica, and I just turned 29, which, let's be real, is basically 30, still figuring things out. You know, like, whose life isn't a hot mess express these days. Anyway, this all started when I needed a roommate. My old one, Ashley, decided she was too good for our perfectly fine 2-bedroom apartment and wanted to move in with her boyfriend. Whatever. Good riddance. Ashley was always a bit too clean, if you know what I mean. Always doing dishes, vacuuming. Annoying. So I put out feelers, and that's when Sarah popped up. Sarah. She was, well, she seemed fine at first. Quiet. A little mousy. Not exactly a party animal. Which I figured was a good thing. Less drama. Right? She worked at some tech company, which sounded boring as heck, but she made decent money. That was the main thing. My job, it's fine. I work in the office, doing stuff, important stuff, but it's not like I'm rolling in it. So a roommate who could cover her share without complaining was key. We found this great place, a 2-bedroom, 2-bath, in a pretty decent part of Dallas. The rent was steep, but with 2 incomes, totally doable. I was already picturing myself having cute little brunch dates on the weekends, and maybe even getting a new purse. Priorities, you know. From day one, I knew Sarah was a bit particular. She had all these rules about cleanliness. Oh, Jess, could you wipe down the counter after you cook? Could you maybe not leave your shoes in the living room? Honestly, it was exhausting. It's an apartment, not a museum. And it's not like I'm a slob. I just have a different definition of clean. Sometimes things pile up. It happens. It's called living. But Sarah, she acted like a single crumb was a personal insult. She had this way of looking at you, not even saying anything, just a slow blink. And you knew she was judging you? Between us. I wanted to scream sometimes. What was her problem? Then there was the whole shared expenses thing. I'm all for sharing, really, but Sarah was a stickler. She had a whole spreadsheet. For utilities, internet, groceries. Every single thing was tracked down to the penny. And she would send me Venmo requests for, like, $3. 17 for paper towels? Seriously? Who does that? It was beyond nitpicky. My money. It's my money. I work hard for it. And sometimes, I have other things I want to buy. A new top. A night out with friends. Life is short, right? You gotta enjoy it. But she just didn't get it. She'd always pay her part on time. Sometimes even early. And then she'd look at me expectantly. Like, what? Am I supposed to be impressed? Just pay the bill. Sarah. I remember one time I was having a really rough week at work. My boss was being totally unreasonable, piling on all this extra stuff. And I was just exhausted. I came home. And I hadn't had time to do my laundry in a few days. So, yeah, my clothes were overflowing from the hamper in the bathroom. Big deal, right? Sarah saw it, and she didn't say a word. But then, when I went to take a shower, there was a little note taped to the mirror in her neat, precise handwriting. Please keep personal items contained. Thank you. I swear, my blood boiled. It was so passive-aggressive. Why couldn't she just say something? Like, hey Jess, could you handle your laundry? No, it had to be a silent attack. That's when I started to think, okay, this isn't going to work. The real fun started when her boyfriend, Mark, came into the picture. He was this sweet, kind of dorky guy, always smiling, always trying to be helpful, a total people pleaser. Honestly, Sarah had him wrapped around her finger. Obviously, he'd come over and she'd make him do all this stuff. Fix a leaky faucet, hang a picture, assemble some piece of furniture she bought, and he'd do it, no questions asked. I mean, good for her, I guess, but it was just so predictable. He was clearly smitten. I started to notice things. Though, like, Sarah would complain about him to me, how he was too nice or a little boring. And I just listened, pretending to be all sympathetic, nodding along. But in my head, I'm thinking, girl, you picked him. He's exactly what you deserve. She'd talk about how he didn't challenge her enough, or he didn't have enough ambition. Meanwhile, he was working his butt off, saving for a down payment on a place for them. The dude was clearly trying. That's when the idea started to brew. It wasn't a plan, not at first, just a little spark of an idea, a tiny thought that kept nagging at me. See, the thing about our lease was that it had this clause, a pretty standard one, but important. It said that if either tenant broke the lease, the remaining tenant was responsible for the full rent, unless a new qualified tenant was found within a certain time frame. And if a tenant was evicted for violating the terms of the lease, well, that was an automatic forfeiture of their security deposit, and the full rent responsibility fell to them until a replacement was found. Plus, it made it super hard to rent anywhere else. Basically, it was a pretty harsh eviction clause. I started small, just little things. I'd leave my dirty dishes in the sink. Knowing it would annoy her, she'd put them in the dishwasher, huffing a little. Then I started forgetting to pay my share of the utilities on time, not by much. Just a few days late, she'd send me increasingly agitated texts, and I'd just respond with, "Oh, sorry, busy week," or totally slip my mind, and then pay it, just enough to be annoying, not enough to cause a real problem. Yet, one evening, Mark was over, and Sarah was in the shower. I was in the living room, scrolling on my phone, pretending not to listen when he asked me, all polite and earnest. "So, Jess, how are you and Sarah doing as roommates? Everything okay?" I looked up, put on my best innocent face. "Oh, it has its moments. Sarah's great, of course. Just, we have different living styles. That's all. She's very particular." I paused, then added, like it was an afterthought, "She does get pretty stressed out about the apartment, though, like, really stressed. About things being just right." I saw him nod, a little frown on his face. Hook, line, and sinker. The next phase was a little more strategic. Sarah had this really nice, expensive, basically brand new espresso machine that she adored. It was her morning ritual, her sacred time. I started accidentally leaving water in the reservoir or not rinsing the milk frother properly. Just little things, but enough to make it a pain for her to use. She'd send me these increasingly pointed texts about proper machine maintenance, and I'd just text back something like, "Oh, my bad." I thought I did. Total fake out. Then came the guest thing. The lease clearly stated that no one could stay more than 3 consecutive nights without prior written consent from the other tenant. Sarah was a stickler for rules. Remember, and I knew Mark stayed over a lot. Like, a lot. He practically lived there, though he had his own place across town. Sarah didn't see a problem with it, because, well, he was her boyfriend. But I knew it was a loophole, and I was going to use it. I started keeping a mental tally. Mark would come over Friday night, leave Sunday morning. Sometimes he'd stay Monday night too. I'd let it slide for a bit. Then I'd make a casual comment. "Wow, Mark's here again. He's practically moved in." "Huh." Sarah would just shrug, or say something like, "It's fine. He helps out around the place," which, sure, he did, but it was still a violation of the lease. Then I ramped it up. I started inviting my own guests. Nothing crazy, just a friend for a night or two. But I'd make sure it was on a night Mark was there. And I'd be loud, not obnoxious. Just present. Chatting, laughing, maybe watching a movie a little too loud. Sarah would come out of her room, looking tired and annoyed. And I'd just smile sweetly. "Everything okay?" Sarah. Like I had no idea what her problem was. The real kicker was when I forgot to lock the door. Several times. Our building was pretty safe, but still, it was a city. Sarah was obsessed with security, always double-checking the locks, making sure windows were closed. She'd come home and find the door unlocked, and I'd just shrug. Oh, I must have been in a hurry. Or my bad? Totally spaced. She started getting genuinely anxious. I could see it in her eyes. Good. The lease agreement was a beautiful thing. I'd read it inside and out when we signed it, and I knew every single clause. The one about noise complaints, the one about guests, the one about cleanliness that she was so hung up on. I started documenting everything, not in a physical notebook, because that's too risky, just on my phone, in a draft email to myself. Times I saw Mark there more than 3 nights, times I forgot to lock the door, little notes about the espresso machine, the dirty dishes, everything. I was building a case, even if I didn't know exactly what I was building it for yet, just in case. Always be prepared. One morning, Sarah went on a rant about the dishes again. She'd found a single, dried-up cereal bowl in the sink. A cereal bowl. She went off about how it was disrespectful and unhygienic and unacceptable. and something in me just snapped, not outwardly, of course. I just stared at her, then I started to cry. Not full-on sobbing, just a few tears, welling up in my eyes. My voice catching, "Sarah," I choked out. I'm going through so much right now. My job is really stressful, and my mom isn't doing so great, and I'm just trying my best, and you're yelling at me about a bowl. I watched her face soften, just a little. That's the thing about people like Sarah. They don't know what to do with tears. They get uncomfortable. "I'm sorry," she said, genuinely sounding apologetic. I didn't realize, bingo, weaponized vulnerability. Baby works every time. But I wasn't sorry. Not really. It just gave me a moment to regroup. I kept up the little annoyances. I'd accidentally use her expensive shampoo. I'd forget to replace the toilet paper when it ran out, leaving an empty roll on the holder. I'd leave my mail scattered on the kitchen counter, even though she hated clutter. Just constant, low-level irritation. It was like chipping away at a statue. Slow, but effective. Then, one evening, Sarah and Mark were having a fight. A real one. I could hear it through the thin walls of my bedroom. It sounded like it was about money, and about him not spending enough time at his own place, and about her feeling suffocated. I just laid there, listening, a tiny smile playing on my lips. This was perfect. The cracks were starting to show. The next day, Mark came to me. He looked worried, stressed. "Jess," he said, "is Sarah okay? She seems really on edge lately." I put on my most concerned face. "Oh, Mark," I said, my voice low and sympathetic. "She's been through a lot. You know, she takes things very personally. And I think she's under a lot of pressure right now with the apartment. All the responsibilities, it's a lot for one person." I let that hang in the air. He nodded slowly, clearly putting the pieces together in his head. She's the problem. She's the one making things hard. That was the narrative I wanted to build. Then came the big one. I started inviting friends over. Not just for a night, but for a whole weekend. And not just one friend, but two. I told them to just crash on the couch. That it was fine. Sarah came home to find 3 of my friends. Plummy, spread out in the living room, watching a movie, a pile of takeout containers on the coffee table. Her face went pale. "Jessica," she said, her voice strained. "What is going on?" I just looked at her, innocent as ever. "Oh, just a little get-together. They're crashing for the weekend. No biggie." Her eyes darted to my friends, then back to me. "But the lease? You know about the guest policy?" I shrugged. "Oh, come on. Sarah, it's just for a few days. Don't be such a stickler." My friends looked uncomfortable, she stammered, then just walked away. Defeated? That was the tipping point. The next morning, I woke up to a long, formal-looking email from Sarah. She had CC'd the landlord. The email detailed all my supposed violations: the noise, the guests, the untidiness, the unlocked door. She even mentioned the late utility payments. It was a masterpiece of passive-aggressive grievance, and it had her full name and signature at the bottom. She was trying to evict me. The audacity. But here's the thing. I had been waiting for this. I immediately forwarded her email to the landlord, with my own carefully crafted response. I wrote about how Sarah was harassing me, how she was creating a hostile living environment, how she was constantly nitpicking and making me feel unwelcome in my own home. I mentioned her incessant demands for cleanliness, her obsession with the spreadsheet, her constant complaining about Mark. And then, the real clincher, I attached the photos I had taken of Mark's car in the parking lot, day after day, for weeks on end. The dates and times were conveniently visible in the photo metadata. I also mentioned the lease clause about guests staying longer than 3 nights. I ended my email by saying that Sarah was clearly violating the terms of the lease by having an undeclared resident living there, and that her behavior was making it impossible for me to live peacefully. I also mentioned that I suspected she was trying to get me out so Mark could move in without paying rent. Chef's kiss, the landlord, a stern but fair woman named Miss Evans, called us both in for a meeting a few days later. Sarah looked shocked when Miss Evans brought up Mark. "Is this true, Sarah?" she asked. Sarah stammered. "Well, he stays over sometimes, but he doesn't live here." Miss Evans held up a hand. "The lease is very clear. More than 3 consecutive nights. It's considered a resident. And you did not declare him." Sarah looked horrified. I just sat there, looking calm and collected, like I was the victim of a grave injustice. I even dabbed my eyes with a tissue at one point, just for effect. Ms. Evans then went through Sarah's list of complaints against me. I had a ready answer for everything. The dishes. "Oh, I'm so sorry." Ms. Evans. It was just one or two, and I was going through a really rough time. I thought Sarah understood. The unlocked door. I have no idea how that happened. I'm so careful. Maybe someone else forgot. The guests. They were just visiting Ms. Evans. Just for a few nights, like the lease allows. Sarah just has a problem with me having friends over. I kept my voice soft, reasonable, almost tearful. Miss Evans listened patiently. Then she turned to Sarah. Sarah, while some of your complaints may have merit, the fact remains that you have a clear violation of the lease yourself, and your roommate here has evidence. Furthermore, your actions in trying to remove her without following proper procedure are concerning. This creates a difficult situation for everyone. She paused, given the circumstances, and the clear breakdown in communication and trust. I am offering both of you a choice. You can both break the lease, with no penalty, and move out within 30 days. Or one of you can choose to take over the entire lease. Sarah looked absolutely gutted. She knew she was caught. Her eyes darted to me, a flicker of something in them. Hatred. Recognition. I don't know. All I knew was I had won. I spoke up, my voice still a little shaky. Ms. Evans, I love this apartment. I really do, and I'm willing to make it work. I just want to live peacefully. I looked at Sarah. If Sarah feels she can't, then maybe it's best if she moves out. Ms. Evans looked at Sarah. Sarah, defeated, just nodded slowly. I'll move out, she said in a quiet voice. I can't stay here anymore. And that was it. She agreed to move out. No penalty for me. Her security deposit was forfeited to cover the minor damages she'd caused during her stay, aka nothing. But it sounded good. She had to pay her share of the rent for the next 30 days. Until she was officially gone. I stayed alone. In the apartment I had always wanted. I even redecorated. It was glorious. I thought I had everything figured out. I had orchestrated a masterpiece. Mark, bless his heart, actually came to help her move out. He looked heartbroken. Sarah barely said a word to me. Just packed her boxes, her face like stone. As she was leaving, she paused at the door, her eyes on me. You know, she said, her voice barely a whisper. You're a truly awful person, Jessica. I just smiled. A sweet, innocent smile. I'm just protecting myself. Sarah, you brought this on yourself. She just shook her head and walked out. Good riddance. Life was great for a while. I had the whole apartment to myself. No one to nag me about dishes or leaving the door unlocked. No one tracking my every move. It was freedom. I threw a few parties. Had friends over whenever I wanted. It was perfect. For a few months. Anyway. Then things started to unravel. My job. It wasn't as stable as I thought. There were layoffs. And guess who was on the list? Me. Just like that. Poof! No job. And I had gotten used to the full rent being split. Now it was all on me. I tried to find something else. But the market was tough. I burned through my savings pretty quickly. I started picking up odd jobs. Anything I could find. It was humbling, to say the least. I even tried to find another roommate. But it was like a curse. Everyone I interviewed was either sketchy, or they wanted a place cheaper than what I could offer, or they just didn't feel right. The apartment started to feel less like a haven and more like a very expensive cage. The walls felt like they were closing in. I was getting desperate. That's when I swallowed my pride and started delivering groceries. It was flexible. The pay wasn't great, but it was something, and that's how I ended up on her doorstep. I picked up an order, saw the address, and my stomach dropped. No, it couldn't be, but it was the building, our old building. I walked up to the unit number, and there it was. Not just the unit. The condo, the one we had rented, only the building looked different. Newer. Ms. Evans had mentioned something about the owners putting the units up for sale, but I hadn't thought anything of it. And then the door opened, and there she was, Sarah. Not the mousy. Quiet Sarah, I remembered. This Sarah was different. Her hair was styled. She was wearing a smart dress, and she had this glow about her, a confident, happy glow, and behind her, smiling, was Mark, not the dorky, people-pleasing Mark. This Mark looked solid, settled, happy. He had his arm around her. I just stood there, holding a bag of organic kale and some fancy cheese. My mouth felt dry. Jessica, Sarah said, her voice perfectly calm, almost amused. Small world. I mumbled something about a delivery. She just nodded, took the bag. Thanks, she said, her eyes meeting mine. And there was no anger there, no resentment, just recognition and a tiny hint of pity. Pity. For me, I wanted to scream. We bought the condo, Mark said, beaming. After everything, Sarah decided she loved the place too much to leave. And the owner gave us a great deal. It closed last month. My mind raced. They bought it. Together, this condo, the very place I had worked so hard to get her kicked out of. The place I had thought was mine. And now she owned it. With Mark, the guy I had helped her complain about. The guy I had helped subtly turn against her. It was too much. I just stood there, clutching the empty grocery bag, my face hot. Sarah looked at me. Then she looked at Mark. And they exchanged a look, a knowing look. A look that said, "Remember that crazy roommate?" Look at her now. I wanted to say something. Anything. To lash out. To make some snide remark. But nothing came out. My throat was tight. I just managed a week. Congrats. And turned to leave. As I walked away, I heard Sarah's voice. A little louder now. Clear and bright. "Oh, and Jessica." I turned back, my heart pounding. "Thanks for everything. You really helped me see things clearly back then. It was a blessing in disguise. A blessing in disguise." My jaw clenched. A blessing in disguise for her, not for me. I was the one delivering groceries, barely scraping by. She was the one who owned the condo, living her happily ever after. The unfairness of it all, it was maddening. I got back to my car, fumbling with the keys, my hands shaking. I pulled away from the curb, my eyes burning. It was the worst kind of karmic justice. Not a car accident. Not losing everything in a fire. Not even some public scandal. No, it was this quiet, infuriating, in-your-face reversal of fortune. She didn't lose her job. She didn't get dumped. She didn't get publicly shamed. She got the condo. The very thing I had tried to deny her. And she was happy. Genuinely happy. And me? I'm still here. Still grinding. Still wondering what went wrong. I did everything right. Didn't I played the game. I outsmarted her. I got what I wanted. But then, it all just went south. It's not fair. It's never fair. Everyone else gets their happy ending. And I'm just stuck here, watching them. It's her fault. Really, if she hadn't been so particular, if she hadn't been so annoying, none of this would have happened. I just wanted a peaceful place to live. And now I just deliver groceries to the people who have everything. It's fine. I don't care anymore. Whatever. I'll figure it out. Eventually. It's the principle of the thing. You know, the absolute audacity.